Mermaids have long been a subject of fascination and fear, their mythical allure captivating countless generations. These enchanting, half-human, half-fish creatures have appeared in folklore, literature, and even modern pop culture. Yet, while the popular image of a mermaid often portrays them as beautiful and serene beings, there are darker and far more sinister tales of encounters that will make your spine shiver. Here are 3 terrifying mermaid encounters that will leave you wondering if they really are as harmless as they seem. The first encounter comes from the chilling and remote waters off the coast of Newfoundland, Canada. For years, the rugged shorelines and misty seas have been home to fishermen, their boats slicing through the cold, unforgiving waters. One particular fisherman, whom we will call Robert, had been working these waters for decades. His hands were weathered, his body worn, but his experience and skill kept him grounded in the sea's mysteries. Little did Robert know that he was about to be introduced to one of the most terrifying encounters of his life. It was a foggy morning, the type of day when visibility was minimal, and the water's surface seemed like a solid mirror, reflecting nothing but the dense grayness. Robert had set out early as usual to check his nets. The small boat creaked under the weight of the day's catch. As he pulled closer to his usual spot, a strange sensation began to crawl up his spine. It was the unmistakable feeling of being watched. At first, Robert dismissed it as the normal paranoia that comes with long days alone on the sea. However, when he heard the splashing sound, a soft, rhythmic tapping against the water, his heart began to race. He stopped, staring into the fog, searching for the source. It wasn't a fish. It wasn't the usual sea creatures he encountered. And then he saw it. A figure emerged from the mist, just at the edge of the boat. At first, Robert thought it might have been a seal or some other aquatic mammal. But as it drew closer, he realized it wasn't any creature he had ever seen before. The thing was human-like in shape, but its skin was pale, translucent, and wet. Its long hair floated around its face, tangled in seaweed, and its eyes gleamed with a cold, predatory intensity. Before he could react, the creature let out a haunting cry, a mixture of sorrow and rage, before it lunged at him with terrifying speed. Robert tried to defend himself, but the mermaid was upon him in seconds, its cold, slippery hands gripping his arms with unyielding strength. Its mouth opened, revealing sharp, jagged teeth as it hissed at him, dragging him towards the edge of the boat. With his heart pounding in his chest, Robert kicked and fought with all his strength, finally managing to break free. He scrambled back into the boat, his legs shaking uncontrollably as he grabbed the oars and rowed frantically toward shore. Behind him, he could hear the mermaid's laughter, a high-pitched, eerie sound that echoed across the water, mocking his escape. Robert never returned to those waters again, but the memory of that encounter haunted him for the rest of his life. The second terrifying mermaid encounter takes place in the warm, tropical waters off the coast of a remote island in the Pacific. For these particular travelers, the encounter was not only terrifying but also mysterious in its origins. A group of friends had decided to embark on a sailing adventure, seeking out new and uncharted islands for exploration. After days of smooth sailing, they came across an isolated island that had never been recorded on any map. The island seemed untouched, a tropical paradise with white sandy beaches and lush jungle trees. After anchoring their boat and exploring the shore, they decided to take a swim in the crystal-clear waters. As they swam out farther from the shore, the water began to change. It went from warm and inviting to cool and unsettling, the temperature dipping sharply. The group shrugged it off, thinking it was nothing more than a simple shift in the water's current. However, one of the swimmers, a man named Steve, noticed something odd. The water around them began to swirl, as though a large creature was moving beneath the surface. At first, Steve tried to alert his friends, but the swirling continued, growing more intense. He dove under the water to investigate, his heart pounding in his chest. Below him, he saw what looked like a shimmering figure moving gracefully through the depths. It had the body of a woman, but its lower half was not human. The tail of a fish, long and powerful, undulated in the water, propelling it forward with an unnatural speed. The creature's skin gleamed like polished silver, its long hair floating behind it like strands of seaweed. Before he could even react, the mermaid's eyes locked with his. There was a moment of recognition, as though it knew exactly who he was and what he was doing there. In a flash, the creature lunged at Steve, grabbing him with its powerful tail and pulling him deeper into the water. His friends watched in horror as Steve was dragged under, his screams muffled by the sound of the waves. They tried to swim towards him, but the current became too strong, and the water too choppy. It was as though an invisible force was pushing them away from the scene. When the water finally calmed and they managed to regain control, there was no sign of Steve. The group quickly made their way back to the boat, shaken and terrified. They searched the waters for hours, but Steve was never seen again. Some say the mermaid dragged him to the bottom of the ocean, where it's said she claims the souls of those who trespass in her domain. To this day, the island remains uncharted on any map, and no one dares to sail its waters again. The third encounter occurred in the icy, freezing waters of the Arctic Ocean, where the harsh winds and the unforgiving cold create a bleak and desolate landscape. Here, in the land of snow and ice, the mermaids are not the seductive, graceful beings of legend. They are something much more terrifying, more primal. A crew of researchers had been sent to study the migration patterns of various marine animals in this remote part of the world. Their work was dangerous, and they were fully aware of the risks, but the promise of discovering something new kept them going. However, they were not prepared for what they would find beneath the surface. One evening, as they made their way back to the research station after a long day on the ice, the crew noticed something strange. The sky had darkened much earlier than usual, and a thick fog had rolled in, blanketing the landscape in a ghostly pallor. A strange sound began to echo from the icy waters, a low, throaty growl that reverberated through the boat's hull. The captain, a seasoned man who had seen countless storms and battles with nature, was unnerved. He signaled for the crew to remain quiet as they moved closer to investigate. And then they saw it. At first, it appeared to be a simple shadow in the water. But as the fog lifted momentarily, the full horror of the creature became clear. A massive mermaid, its body frozen and pale as if it had been trapped in the ice for centuries, floated just beneath the surface. Its tail was enormous, covered in jagged, ice-like scales, and its mouth was wide, lined with sharp, bone-crushing teeth. The eyes of the creature were the most horrifying of all. They glowed with an eerie, unnatural light, and they locked onto the crew with a malevolent stare. The creature began to move, its icy tail creating violent waves as it closed in on the boat. The crew could hear its eerie growl getting louder, almost like a call, summoning something larger from the depths. It wasn't just a mermaid they had encountered. It was a hunter, a predator of the sea, and it wanted them. In a panic, the crew fired flares into the water, hoping the light would drive the creature away. But the mermaid continued to approach, its growl turning into a deafening screech. As it reached the boat, one of the researchers, unable to withstand the terror, jumped into the freezing water. His body was never found. The captain ordered an immediate retreat, and the boat sped away as fast as it could. But even as they sailed into safer waters, the crew could hear the creature's screeches in the distance, echoing over the water like a warning. The memory of that encounter would never leave them, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk beneath the surface. These three terrifying mermaid encounters serve as a stark reminder that the oceans are full of mysteries, many of which may never be understood. What lies beneath the waves is not always beautiful and serene. It can be dark, dangerous, and deadly. The next time you find yourself by the water, remember these tales. You might just think twice before venturing too far from shore.